Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Hanson and today I'm going to demo a pinch pot. First thing I'm going to direct you to is this lovely graphic. Okay, credit to Molly Yoho who's filming as well. This is a pinch pot diagram of what your pinch pot should look like if it were cut in half. Pinky thickness or 1/4 inch. If you were to cut your pot in half, you would have that same consistent thickness all the way through. And then you'll see here, the easiest way to start a pinch pot is divide it in layers. So I'm going to do that as well. Okay. So when starting your pinch pot, I have a ball of clay that I just pulled out of the bag. And it does not look ready to work with, right? The most important thing is wedging, okay? So when you wedge your clay, I like to stand when I wedge. I like to put pressure on the clay and lift it up. And this is wedging, and it should make like a cone shape if you're doing it correctly. See, it kind of looks cone shaped a little bit. It's not a perfect cone, but, and what I'm doing here, this will start to look more like a cone. So now you can see it's more cone shaped, okay? And it should start like rolling in the inside too, because you want to get rid of all the air bubbles, because air bubbles will explode. Not always, but a lot of times. Then what I do is what I call snowballing. And since most of my students live in Minnesota, I hope that you've packed a snowball before. You want to try to get rid of all these little lines. You're not going to get rid of all of them, but at least try to make it look a little bit better. Okay, and then once you have like a good ball shape that's about the size of your fist, then you're ready to start with the pinch pot, okay? First thing you're going to do is take your thumb and you're going to poke a hole all the way down to the bottom. Not through the clay, but down to the bottom. And then you'll have one hole. If you have long nails, you can use this ribbon tool to poke the hole, okay? Do not use a fettling knife to poke the hole because this has a sharp blade, and if you grab it, you will slice your hand open. That has happened, unfortunately, before. Do not do that, okay? So you're gonna poke your hole into the ball, and then what you're gonna do is if you want to divide it like the diagram into 4 layers, that makes it easy if you're learning. And so I just use the fettling knife for this, and I make 3 little lines. Okay, now what that means is you're gonna pinch layer by layer. Don't try to be a muscle man and squeeze the whole thing all at once. If you go layer by layer, it'll work out easier. I always like to spray the clay when I start. You kind of do the motion of like using a remote control. So you're going to pinch the first layer, just like this, and it's gonna start to look kind of like a mushroom. And I'm pinching gently. If you pinch too hard, you're gonna start to get cracks in your rim. Your rim should start to look like this, not very many cracks. Okay, I'm gonna kind of pinch and stretch the clay outward as I pinch. You will start to get some little hairline cracks, just smooth those over before they get any bigger, okay? Then once you have that pinky thickness for that first layer, you can go down to the second layer. I like to spray before every layer. So I'm gonna go down. This one will be a little bit harder because you're squeezing more clay, but again, I'm just going around in my hand and pinching that clay all the way around to stretch that clay out. And going layer by layer, it helps you to kind of feel that thickness. Like I said, the successful pinch pot is having a pinch pot that's the same thickness all the way through. So you're gonna pinch that all the way through. And it should look pretty consistent. Like if you kind of feel with your hands from the top to the bottom, you can tell where the thicker areas are and where the thinner areas are. Here's where it starts to get a little harder is now you need to get down to that 3rd layer. And so this is where instead of doing like a remote function, you're gonna do more of a sock puppet. And you're gonna go down to that 3rd layer and you're gonna start pinching with your fingertips. And this will be a little challenging to do and you're gonna have to spend some time on it. So just don't rush this process. You wanna be really patient and take your time. Okay, and then once you pinch that 3rd layer, it shouldn't really look like a mushroom anymore if you're doing it correctly. It should start to actually look like a piece of pottery. And that's where you're gonna go down and you're gonna start stretching the bottom out. And so now, because the only thick part now is down here at the bottom. So I'm gonna spray, I like to spray the inside and the outside, and I'm gonna hold it in the palm of my hand and stretch from the inside out. So you're gonna start to stretch that clay. And you'll notice you're gonna get some little tears in your rim as well. That's actually because I probably didn't wedge it long enough, and that's where I got some of those cracks. It's not the end of the world. I'll show you how to trim the rim. If you have long nails, a lot of people who have long nails like to use a smoothing tool and kind of keep the smoothing tool behind your finger so you can use this to stretch it out. That way you don't get your nails in there. And then what some people like to do is they like to put it on the table because your bottom's round, right? So to flatten the bottom, you can kind of put it on the table and you can start pushing that way as well. Now you'll notice my rim is out of control here. So I'm gonna trim the rim. To do this, don't take the fettling knife and chop all the way through. You actually wanna put it in. I like to hold it at eye level and I just run it all the way around and trim off that part that rips. Most of you, when making a pinch pot, will have a rim that rips. And it's just because like that's making pinch pots. Pinch pots are not the most exciting pots to make, but they teach you a lot. They teach you a lot about thickness, how to work with the clay, the drying, the smoothing, the carving, all those things. Okay, all right, so then I have a pretty consistent pot. Now what you're gonna do at this stage is you're gonna start feeling just lightly from the bottom to the top and feeling where all those thick areas are, and you're gonna start pinching out those thick areas. And so this is the part where, like with pottery, you really got to spend time on it, because if you rush through it, it's not going to turn out the way you want. So I'll say, it's like being in a relationship. If you rush into things, it doesn't work out. I got to add a pun even if it's a video. All right, so then what a lot of people do too is they just keep it on the table, and you can kind of rotate it on the table and press down into the bottom to kind of flatten that bottom and make a nice flat shape. So you can kind of work your way around the table, you can add water, smooth it out, whatever you want to do, but that's basically how a pinch pot works. Now obviously this is not refined, it's not perfect at all. I would work on it a lot more, but for the sake of the demo, that's the gist of it. The only other thing that I was gonna mention is how to smooth it out. So you'll notice you're gonna have a lot of fingerprints, okay? The best way is to take a clean rubber rib and kind of bend it, hold it in your hand, and then compress. See, I'm kind of bending it and compressing with my hand on the inside. And what that does is it just ultra smooths it and gets rid of some of those bumps. So you can see like the difference between this side and this side. They look pretty different, okay? You can also, for hard to get areas, you can use a smoothing tool and you can dig into the texture as well. And then after you dig it in and level it out, you can use the rubber rib on top to go back in and smooth it out more, okay? Carvings, when you're adding carvings, you never want to take a needle tool and make a design, because what it does is it makes the edges of the design sharp and the glaze does not turn out. And so what you'll do instead of using you can trace with a needle tool, because like let's say I don't like this, I can wipe it away really easily. Okay, so like I'm gonna trace my design. Then I can go back over it. This is a really good tool. Any of these tools with green spray paint, and what it does is it removes the clay. So instead of making those sharp edges, it removes. And this clay is a little bit wet to carve. You'd want to let it dry a little bit more to leather hard, because then see I'm getting a lot of little crumbs, but you can always go back and kind of tap those crumbs out. Most people will wait until it's leather hard to do the carvings, but obviously this is a demo. I'm doing things a little fast, but this design is what you'd want from a design, okay? There also are other thicker loop tools that will make larger marks as well. So like if you wanted to go in and add a different kind of design, you know, all those tools make different types of designs. So you can kind of play with those as well. Last thing, when you're done, because this is just practice. So when you start making pinch pots, you're just gonna be practicing. My advice is to take your fettling knife and actually chop the pot in half and see what your thickness looks like, because we're just practicing right now. And then you can see, so if you look at my thickness, you'll notice it's a little too thick here on this side. So I actually didn't make it consistent enough. I didn't spend enough time making sure that it was all consistent. And so those areas, if it's thicker in one area than the other, it will dry unevenly, which can cause cracks. So it's really important to try to practice and try to get that even consistency all the way through the pinch pot. And then of course, just like any clay, you never throw clay away. We can always spray all the pieces, and then you can just smash them all back up together, re-wedge the clay, and then make another one, okay? So that is pinch pots and carving, okay? The only other thing that I didn't mention is you never want to use a sponge to smooth out the texture. If you use a sponge to smooth out the texture, it will create sandy texture on the surface. You don't want that. The best way to smooth the clay is to use a rubber rib or even just your finger with some water, and that will be a much better texture for that clay. Okay? You can definitely use water to like smooth things out, but always go back over it with your finger or another tool. Okay? I think that about covers it. Happy pinching.